So today I removed Swarmtrap number 2 from way up in the tree. It was pretty heavy. I would say that was about maybe 10 pounds. Most of it was the wood. But there were a lot of bees in this beehive. This was probably the largest bee swarm I've collected this spring. It had so many bees it covered the whole front surface of that box. So anyway, I brought it down out of the tree and um, started removing the um, straps. And you never know what you're going to find in these swarm traps. So I kind of went at it slow. Don't know if this is a mean beehive or a nice beehive. So I take a peek under here and see, and they're kind of just hanging out. So you'll see here in a second just how many bees we have in this beehive. There's a bunch of them. And I decided to not put that down in the grass because I was thinking about the queen. If she's roaming around, I want to make sure she stays in a box. So kind of smoking up the area. I'll show you a lessons learned of this video here at the end about keeping the smoker going. We just got through doing the yard this afternoon, and there was a lot of branches laying around, so I came up with this genius idea. But anyway, here's me getting as many of the bees as possible into the bee box before I start doing my work. And the goal is to move those frames out of that yellow box into the new purple box that I set up for them. So anyway, we're ready to start. Let's check out that first frame. Now I smoked them down, but they'll start peeking their heads out here in just a second. They don't stay down too long. So the first frame up is a medium frame, which is a frame that fits perfectly into that purple box. And you can see they're clinging to each other there at the bottom. It's like they were starting to build more honeycomb on the bottom of that one. So I kind of wave them gently across the bottom so I don't get them all angry at me, so that that'll set down in the box nice. And now it's time to start digging into those slats that I make. I have to unscrew it or unscrew them, and they don't like the vibrations too much of a power drill, but we'll do it anyway. Now I screw those in because when I set the swarm traps up, I don't like those things shifting and falling down in there, so that locks them in place. And you can tell I don't put too much effort into making those things. Some are wider, some are slimmer. As time goes on, I'll get better at it. Well, not so much better. I'll just pay more attention and take more time to do it. I usually just hastily put these things together to get the trap up. And you'll see the problem that it causes when you don't use proper spacing on these slats. They start doing something called cross comb. They start building their honeycomb across the slats instead of in line with them. And that's another lesson learned. I'll show you at the end of the video on how to kind of get these slats started with used comb. So here we go. You can already see that there's some honeycomb tearing apart right there in the middle. But we do it pretty slowly, and it actually turned out okay. So like I said, this was a pretty big beehive. This is the second frame coming over, and look how big those honeycombs are. They've only been in there a week, maybe 7 days. They are really cranking it out. And that was too big to actually fit in the box, so I had to kind of lay it down sideways. And I'll come back later and actually cut the comb bottoms off, and I'll show you what I do with those cut off honeycombs later on in the video. Same thing for this guy here. He had just a really large honeycomb, and he was cross-combed a little bit with the one adjacent to him. See how it's tearing off there? A lot of bees, just a lot of bees. A lot of honeycomb too. So I had to lay him sideways, but interestingly, I mean not interesting, but unfortunately, that one fell down and bent the honeycomb a little bit. You'll see it here as I'm moving things around. But it's okay. I actually was able to reuse that bottom part of the honeycomb. You'll see in the end of the video here. I just took a knife and cut it straight. But because this honeycomb was so big, what I needed to do was get that table cleared off so I could start cutting that honeycomb so that it fit inside frames, and using string to tie that honeycomb in the frame so it doesn't fall out. So I'm not going to leave that natural honeycomb hanging on those slats. I'm actually going to cut the honeycomb into a square that fits inside that frame there, and then make a little lattice out of the string. Now the camera cut off on me because the battery ran out, but essentially I left to go get the staple gun so I could staple this string down versus try to tie a knot. It's very hard to tie. Alright, so here we're going to take care of that extra comb left over from moving them out of the Swarmtrap into the purple hive. So I heat up a frame or a wooden slat that goes in Swarmtraps, and I put the wax comb down on there, and it melts to the surface. Now then I do kind of make a few extra passes at it, and you can see the comb take on a different color when I do that. And what that does is it melts the honeycomb to the frame, and good to go. I think I'll make another pass at this one here. Oh wait, first I have to drink a beer. Okay. But that's a good thing, because the next Swarmtraps that I put out, they'll have some honeycomb in there for the bees to get a head start, and the honeycomb will be lined up with the frame, and that's helpful because when bees move in and start making honeycomb in Swarmtraps, they kind of make it in any direction they want to do that. So if you have a guide for them to start with, that's a good thing. So I do this a couple more times, and I end up with 3 of these things. But that you see the general idea. Heat it up, put the honeycomb on there, and then give it a few passes to make sure it sticks, and then just set it upside down, and you're good to go. So here's another lesson learned on this little trip. I had a really good smoker going this time because I started using the miter saw to create these little, I don't know, smoke logs, little mini smoke logs. Just go find a branch in the yard. I'm on 3 acres, so there's a lot of wood laying around. And so anyway, started making these little smoke logs here, and man, that kept the smoker going a long time. And there seems to be just an endless supply of these things. So that helped a lot.